Hey guys, this is Joseph here, and here's my entry for the Down and Dirty Weathering Contest 3. Now I'm going to do a piece of rolling stock. It's a classic solid cold FGE car. It's mechanical reefer, 50 foot. So it's a little hard to find a lot of prototypical photos for the real cold and solid cold. So what I basically did was splice a few of those together in some mechanical reefers, and here's are some of my inspirations for that. I'm also going to do some prototypical graffiti on this car, and hopefully everything turns out great. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and separate the chassis from the body. It's going to make it easier to weather, of course. Now I'm going to go ahead and tape over the reporting marks. That's going to give us a freshly painted appearance once we're done weathering the car and remove those. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use a Q-tip to remove some of the blue in the solid cold logo to fade it down, because a lot of the times the solid cold logo is sun beaten and a lot of that paint wears away. Also, to achieve some fading, I like to use Montana 94 transparent white. It gives a really good overall appearance of faded colors and tones down a lot of the bright blue of that logo. As you can see, we're achieving the nice effect here. Everything's going great and on track. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and tape off a few parts of the seams and rivets on this. It's going to give us a more realistic appearance. So it's not going to be too bad. We're just going to go ahead and tape over some of the information on the car, and I'm going to use Rustoleum Automotive primer. It's pretty good. It dries pretty quickly and covers pretty fast. We're just going to give it a few sprays, light coat. Go ahead and remove it, and as you can see, we got some great patching, removing some of that tape that was covering the information. I also added some micro scale decals, consolidated loop plates. Next, we're going to give the car a wash. I like to use this black, and I believe it's burnt sienna. Not too bad, they're about $1 a piece at Walmart. Basically going to wet the whole train down, mix both the colors, and just wash right over the whole train. It's pretty simple. Just want to make sure you get every nook and cranny, and that's going to simulate grime on it. So once it's done, I like to take a Q-tip and wet it, and we're basically just going to erase everything that's on the open spots and just leave the seams and cracks and crevices where dirt naturally appears. You can look at different reference photos to see where those buildup spots are, but after a while you kind of get the idea of it, and generally using a prototypical photo is always going to help you. So here's just a little bit sped up video of the process that I like to use. So we're looking pretty good here so far. And plus, giving it that mixture of brown and black doesn't give it just like a one-dimensional look or feel. So it looks a little bit more realistic, feels a little bit more realistic, and you can see the results are looking great so far. So right here, since it's a ladder or any kind of railing or door line or anything like that, I usually try to wipe all the excess grime off. That's going to give it the correct appearance of the more typical spots where everyone grabs and reaches for, and there's just not as much grime on there. And here we're just going to do pretty much the same thing to the ends. Clearing those ladders really brings out the depth also. So that's a pretty good tip there. Leaves all the dirt recessed in between the cracks and crevices. And we're pretty much going to do the same thing for the roof. Now the roof, of course, on this particular model and a few photo shots that I have of it, there's not too much grime buildup. It's mainly on the sides, but we're going to go ahead and apply the same kind of wash we did as the sides and the bodies. Then we're going to go ahead and let it dry, and fairly quick with the acrylic. So we're going to use the same technique with the Q-tip and remove all the grime. giving a pretty much clean appearance, and this is what it looks like all around so far. Not too bad. We're going to go ahead and use the same technique as we did on the sides for the roof walk. And here is, again, I'm going to use the Montana 94 Air White. That's going to fade down the grime and dull out the paint even more, which is going to give us a more realistic dusty effect, which is exactly what we're going for. Show some age on it, some dust. Looking good so far. Now here, we're going to go ahead and add some more of the rust color. You can see it's a little bit hard to see in this photo, but in between the seams, there's also, besides black and grime, there's going to be some rust in there. So I like to use basically a chalk. It's a burnt sienna color. I actually directly apply it to the seams very lightly, so it just grabs on the rivets. And it actually spreads fairly easily here. Go ahead and just take a dry brush and just kind of fan it out and feather it out. Of course, using your prototypical photos again to see exactly where the buildup is and where some of the streaking is. I'm going to go apply a little bit more here, right where that corner is. Just dust it up. And it's okay if you go a little bit overboard. You can always just wipe it again with a Q-tip and some water. Really easy to take off. Now for this, once I'm done, go ahead and spreading some of that chalk out. I like to then apply another coat of clear Rustoleum matte finish. It's going to go ahead and lock it in. And there's the overall view of it. Great tone and color to match. And here's the roof detail now we're going to go for. Not too much, not too bad. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to use the same feathering technique we did with the chalk. But here, of course, using my prototypical photo again, I'm going to go ahead and just dab on the areas that kind of match the roof detail we were just looking at. Nothing fancy, it's actually pretty simple. Then of course we're going to go ahead and streak it down and across to fade out the weathering and the rust that's just built up on there. Of course it goes down the sides, follows the gravity of the car. And here it is, once we have all of it done and knocked out. Looks great, matches pretty well. Of course I'm going to seal that in too. Now right here, I like to move on to some of the grime and dirt kick up of the wheels on the ends of the cars. So basically just going to take a toothbrush, once again, same colors of the acrylics, wet my toothbrush and just flick it on. Feel generous on the sides because I mean we're going to go back either way, so don't be afraid on this part if you do too much or too less. We're just going to use the same technique with the Q-tip and go back and rub some of the excess off if it's a little bit too much. Now if you notice on the car kick up, it's going to be pretty much two straight lines kicking straight up, so you can always go back and ease that out. We're going to go ahead and seal it, and right here we've actually removed the tape from the reporting marks, so that actually gives it a pretty fresh painted over marking there. And next here's going to be our prototypical graffiti. So there's a few things I like to do here. I like to take a piece of masking tape and actually put this on my phone and traced out the piece and sized it up. And here it is there after it's traced out. I'm going to go ahead and take the taping piece that I have and apply it over the car now. And basically with an X-Acto knife we're just going to cut out the outline. Easy. I like to use Rustoleum and actual graffiti paint for this, so we're going to go ahead with Montana 94s. You can see we're going to color match. Now that it's all taped off and we have the outline, we're going to go ahead and fill it in with the 3 different colors. I'm basically just going to fade it each layer and add to it and add to it. Then we're going to go ahead and remove the tape. You see we have our outline, which is awesome. Now what I like to use are some Posca markers, some micro pens also for our outlines and little details so we can cut back. So I'm basically going to take the white, since it's pretty much a 3-tone color, all outlined in white. We're going to go ahead and fill the outside with the 2 different colors of blue. Also on the other side, I've referenced this graffiti too. What I use for this actually is a Prismacolor pencil. Here goes an undershot of the frame that we disassembled earlier. Now basically I'm going to use the same primer color. It's a rust primer color and the same white Montana 94 and give those just the overall overspray and mixture of them. Here we're going to tape off the trucks. Now the reason I do that so there's no paint in there, that way it doesn't affect the rolling of it later. Same kind of appearance, primer, Montana Air white mixture, nothing fancy in general. Now I like to remove the trucks here. Here's my little trick. I like to add Elmer's glue on the tip of these. That way when you're done painting them, it's easy to just wash off and it rolls smooth. So here they are once it's dry. We're going to go ahead and apply some black, some primer as well again. Remove the glue. I like to take a paper towel and actually use acetone and soak the paper towel down. And then I'll roll the wheel set right over it. Now I did use different trucks for that so it doesn't wear off the previous weathering that we've done. That way it gives us a clean wheel head. That way it looks great. And then right here I've actually also used some acetone on a Q-tip and remove it from the side of the wheel. That way it gives us that clear wheel head just like in real life. Looks great. We're going to go ahead and add the wheels back onto it. We're going to attach it back to the underframe. Also added some of that same chalk we used earlier onto the springs. And here we go, a little bit detailed shots of underneath where I'm just basically dry brushing the same brown burnt umber colors onto there. And applying it more and more and more. And then we're going to add a white, basically wash over the side of the fuel tanks to give us that dried out, sunburnt chemical fusion that's going on the side of the reefer car. Now here we go again. I'm going to use the same trusty old Rustoleum primer again. Now what we're going to achieve here and go for is the rust spots on the side of the car. Here's an example of how a lot of these FGE solid gold, solid cold, real cold cars are. I'm basically going to use that on low pressure and squeeze the tip just so it barely spits out. And that's what's going to give us that effect. Once that dries, I'm going to go ahead and use these two oil colors. Take a toothpick and you can just jab that color onto the little spots we were just using. Once that's all dry, I like to get some turpentine, and this is how we're going to achieve the streaking effect. You're just going to wet that and just drag down once as straight as you can. You don't want to go over it over and over, because what that's going to do basically is going to ruin, the streaking. There's not going to be any colors above that. You're just going to get a lot of linear lines. So you just want to attack the spot of where it's at. Try to be as straight as possible as you can. And then just build up the colors. You can actually wait in between coats for it to dry, and that way give you different layers and shades. Here's a few examples once it's dried of some streaks, some different layers of colors, and some rust. And the reason I didn't get to photograph and video the actual car at the moment is because actually my phone ran out of video, but you get the idea of it. It's not too bad. Now, that's pretty much done with the car now. What we're going to do is I'm just going to add a few more patches so we get some differentiations between the weathering and the patching. Gives it the fresh look, and here we are at the end finally. Pretty much achieved what I was going for. Everything looks great. So now we're all done, and glad you guys were here to enjoy the journey with me. So I hope you guys can enjoy the shots. I'm just going to go ahead and let this roll out, and hopefully you guys learned something or picked up something from this, and glad I could participate. Until next time, you guys have a good one.